This episode of Ticket Volume is brought to you by us, InvGate. Get service operations under control in no time. Get 1 free month of our software solution by going to try.invigate.com. Ticket Volume is proud to present a guest who got his start in software development before diving into academics. He got his PhD at the University of Buenos Aires before serving as a research scientist at ASAP. And he's currently serving as a professor in the Department of Science and Technology at Universidad Quilmes. He is now the head of research and development at InvGate, leading R&D and generative AI applications and features. Welcome to Ticket Volume, where good service is good business. Each week and each month, I get to share news and information for improving IT experiences. I am your lucky host, Matt Barron, and I get to chat with different humans to share their insights on service management, technology, and business. And this episode is going to bring more of that sticky AI goodness. So I also hope that you'll connect, comment on one of our episodes, or just share our podcast with someone. Get involved. Get us improving. We can't depend on the AI to be the only person listening to this podcast. For now, though, let's begin. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Daniel Ciolek.
Hi, Matt. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Very good. I'm doing great. I'm also major congratulations. You're the first InvGate employee to be on the Ticket Volume podcast. Congratulations.
Awesome.
And what a great episode to have one of our foremost, our leading expert in AI on, because it's such an important topic. I mean, good luck going anywhere in ITSM without hearing the term AI. I was on 2 meetings this morning already where AI was the entire focus of the meeting. And I think it's important that we just level set some of this AI stuff so that we can remove some of the fear, uncertainty, doubt, and other chaos that is happening in our news cycle. So, Danny, I'm going to ask you if you would be willing to go briefly through the different categories of AI. How do you think about the different categories of what AI is doing?
Yeah, well, all this new trend is because of this new AI technology, which is generative AI. All these models like GPT, Gemini, Claude, they are great and they have amazing capabilities. But actually, AI has been around for a long, long time. There are many different flavors. Actually, here at InvGate, we have been using some AI models for a very long time, way before GPT came out. So there are many different flavors of AI, as you mentioned. You have the more classical AI. These are very old, like expert systems. You have rule based. They don't learn from data as the newer trends do, but they are still useful systems. We use these rule-based systems for a couple of stuff at InGate, especially software normalization. We have a rule system for software normalization that's very efficient, but it does require some human expertise, tweaking the rules, keeping them updated. But the key there is that we were looking for a very, very efficient solution. So that was one application. Then you have the classical machine learning applications with algorithms that you can use neural networks, but you can use other algorithms like decision trees, random forests, that sort of stuff. Those are very good for creating predictions on tabular data, for instance. We use that to categorize, to map tickets to categories or to fix the priority of tickets. Those kind of predictions, those kind of models do very well at. And then you have the newer, very hot generative models that made a huge breakthrough, because historically we had all these problems that were related to language, for instance, or computer vision. They were very, very hard to solve with the other techniques or with any other kind of algorithm. And this generative AI breakthrough allows us to solve those kinds of problems.
Excellent. Yes, because it's so important to know that the reason this is all popular is basically because now there's a great interface for it. Before, if you wanted to leverage AI, you kind of needed to be a little bit of a nerd or a math nerd or something like that. Now, because of LLMs, right, we can have this natural conversation that we can interact with an AI, so to speak, and that it feels like it's like the last mile towards making it applicable. It's like that last jump that we needed before people really believed that it was doing something useful, even though it was definitely doing things that were useful well before then. It's been around since the 1950s. And so I think part of the reason that there's so much chaos and why we're always talking about this is because there is so much hype around AI. And you are familiar with the hype cycle. I'm familiar with the hype cycle. Our audience is familiar with the hype cycle. Where are we at on the hype cycle, Daniel?
Well, the thing with you just said it. LLMs have this amazing wow factor, right? It's like you see the LLM writing and you say wow, but you see an AI model picking spam from not spam, and you say that's everyday business, right?
Yeah.
You give that for granted. LLMs have this amazing wow factor. So we are at with a lot of expectation that this wow will translate to every aspect of every business. So the expectation today or the predictions today are that AI is going to have this huge financial impact in every business, in every vertical, everywhere. And I think that it's a little bit of a hype. It's a little bit of an inflated expectation. It will have a huge impact, but I usually uh, compare it with graphical user interfaces.
Mm.
Graphic user interfaces have roughly 30 years. Um, and if you take one person today that's used to use a computer or a phone, a tablet, whatever has a graphical user interface, and you say, you can't use graphical user interfaces anymore. You have to go back to the terminal as we used to do 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they would say, no, please, don't take this user interface from me. I can't do anything, and I need my phone, I need my computer, I need all my devices. They are part of my life. We have grown dependent on this. I believe that in the future, and not a very far future, but it will take some time to get there, maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years, will be very dependent on all these AI models, on all this AI functionality, to the point that I will tell to you, you know what, you can't use AI anymore for anything, and you will say, no, please, don't take this from me. Please take the UIs. It's but it's gonna take some time, and in the middle of that time, we'll probably go through some disillusionment because we are making such ambitious predictions for AI. We are just saying, in 1 year, 2 years, is going to change completely the economy of the world, and it has a lot of power, and
Mm.
we will grow dependent on it, and we will use it for everything. But it's gonna take time, and I don't think it's gonna be as fast and as terrible as some people are predicting. So I'm a little bit more conservative there.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm more optimistic too, and conservative. I think that we are kind of at that peak of exaggerated expectations, maybe a little bit past it, even to the point where we are seeing some early adopters actually implementing good use cases for this stuff. But man, what an incredible time to be alive. I continued to tell the story as if like this is a change like when mobile came out, how everything had to adapt to how mobile technology. Now you've got touch, now you've got GPS, you've got geosensors, and it's not, that isn't a good metaphor. I'm realizing your metaphor is much better. The terminal to GUI change is really like that catharsis that happened was much greater of an impact than just honing the screen down to a smaller screen, a mobile screen with some other sensors involved. So I really like that comparison because it's a UI shift. How we're going to interact with machines is going to be completely different. And you totally saw that with I forget, it was like Rabbit or something like that. There was a machine that you would clip on your chest and it would project words onto your palm and you could just ask questions of it. And that is why we know we're at the peak of exaggerated expectations, because if you've seen the reviews of that of that technology, it is not favorable. It was not a great experience. So pretty clear we're going to have to go through a trough of disillusionment for a little bit, but hopefully we'll start seeing some applications of this stuff, because that, I mean, you've been studying and teaching this for years, so you probably are way more excited about this becoming a reality than I am. But what do you think? I would love to hear your perspective, actually, because you've been
I'm
studying this for a while. How does it feel to be in the field now that it's exploding?
No, actually, I'm more excited as a user than as a researcher. Because I'm using AI every day for everything, not only for work, for personal business too. Uh, I'm very excited to use it and to find use cases for it. As a research perspective, it's a very interesting time to be a researcher on this area, because the barrier of entry for so many results has dropped considerably. Um, Not long ago, I published a paper with a couple of co-authors, that we essentially took LLMs and we were able to reuse them as for privacy checking of documents. And we were able to transform the documents, preserving privacy, but also preserving the utility of the documents, which is a hard problem with the classical techniques, because you can simply remove, like in a reduction process, you can remove the information that you think it's sensitive, but then when you want to use the document that is left after the removal of potentially sensitive terms, the document is not useful anymore because you have removed too much. So we are using local LLMs that you can run locally on a computer to detect those potentially sensitive terms, but instead of just removing them, simply rephrase them to another random alternative that the LLM
Mm,
thinks it's likely for that position. It happens that things like names get replaced with other names.
mm-hmm.
Addresses may get replaced with other addresses. So all the sensitive information it's perturbed in such a way that you cannot recover the original information. But when you pass that information through another model that needs to extract some useful insight out of that, the accuracy is much higher because you are not breaking the grammar, you are not breaking the structure of the document. And those things were simply impossible a couple of years before, and now it's relatively simple to do that. And that's just one example. There are many out there. So it's a very interesting time to be a researcher in this area. But it's also very interesting to be a user.
Yes, totally. I love that. I love that you have a positive outlook. Like, hey, I'm just excited to actually get. There are so many problems in our lives. Let's throw some things at them. Like, come on, solve some problems for us. And I love that paper. What a cool application of technology. There used to be this concept that we would talk about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, about data data exhaust. You leave all this data around accidentally. You're just creating data constantly, and sometimes it can give you away, like your address and your name. And I could see how IBM came up with this concept that was like security through obfuscation. Instead of like removing personal information, we just add a ton of personal information to this. And now you can't tell who we're talking about, what their address is, because there's just like 40 people in there, or 100 people, or 1,000 people in there, and 1,000 addresses, and you can't possibly triangulate them all. Fascinating concepts. We are on the verge of some very cool explorations. And I would love to know your advice. How do we stay relevant and find opportunities in this new world, in this new, you know, we went terminal, now we're GUI, now we're AI. How do we stay relevant in this new AI paradigm?
I would advise to focus on practical applications.
Mm,
Try to find the pain points in your product or in your daily life, whatever, and try to see if you can use AI to fix that problem. I've been many times in this situation in which we knew we have a couple of bottlenecks, roadblocks, some big problems that we wanted to solve, but we had no technology to solve those particular problems. One good example is historically here at InvGate we have been looking into a way to uh, reduce the time it takes an agent to reply a message, but also improve the quality of the response.
Hmm.
So we before LLMs, we were unable to find a way to do both at the same time. Where we managed to reduce the time, the quality will also reduce. And when we managed to improve quality, the time it takes usually also increased. So there was no good solution. But now we have implemented a feature that it allows a nation to respond very quickly with very low quality, and we can improve the quality automatically. So it gets the best of both worlds that we were looking at. So those practical applications, they don't need to be big. You can start small and start to run pilots. We are actually running a beta program, so we are not still super clear of what are the features that we want to implement, although we are constantly iterating on new things. But start small, focus on practical applications, iterate, learn from failure. It's very, very important. And of course, try not to buy on the hype. Try to understand what works for you. If it's working for you, if it's working for a couple of users, it might be good. You might have you might think that you have a great idea that changes everything, but if no one really finds it valuable and useful, okay, maybe think it twice.
Yeah, that's good advice and something that I keep seeing. I gave the rabbit example, but yeah, you see these, I don't know what you want to even call them. I've been calling them chat GPT wrappers. Like, you take suddenly software engineers are like, oh my gosh, an LLM can write my code for me, and they have this huge engine I can tap into for LLM interactions. So of course we saw a explosion of startups, especially in the call center and IT service and support space, that started up because they realized, oh my gosh, we can build these things really inexpensively. And it's come to bite them a little bit, right? Because they went all in on one model. And so I'm curious what you think about this. What are the integrate, like, if I if I'm using it in a practical application, what do I need to think about it from like an information architecture or like a technical architecture perspective? What are the integration challenges that people are running across with this technology?
Well, there are many challenges. Some of them are technical, some of them are more organizational challenges. On the technical side, you need to try to be vendor agnostic, avoid the vendor lock-in, because this is a very dynamic area right now. There are no clear winners. Although OpenAI with ChatGPT opened the ground, there are a lot of other competitors. Google, Anthropic with their Cloud model, Meta with the Llama model, and new models get released every day. There are not only model providers but also infrastructure providers. They are creating custom hardware, custom chips to run this model faster, cheaper, with less energy. So there is a lot of work going on. It's unknown where the dust is going to settle. So if you are exploring early on this area, and probably you should be exploring early, you need to prepare all your infrastructure and all the decisions you make to be able to adapt quickly. Try to use and compare all AI providers. Try to be aware of everything that's happening because it changes from from the last week to the next week. It's going to change.
Yeah.
So that's important, and also you need to understand from your own organization. Do you have the data available to leverage the most out of the model? Do you have the skills within your organization, or you need to train, or you need to hire for those skills? Those kind of things are, of course, relevant for any organization. So you have both parts, technical sides and organizational side, that you need to polish. But it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, it doesn't need to change completely your organization. You just need to put uh, a team on that. That's
Bingo.
pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to change the world. Just be curious. Be trying things. Be thinking about how this changes incident management. How does this change incident management? How does this change problem management? Um, and you touched on it when a little bit when you were talking about that paper that you wrote. And this is this is the crux that everyone in IT that's already experimenting on this is coming across, is the privacy challenges. How do we take the names, the social security numbers, the addresses, and scrub that data so that we can start leveraging? I mean, if I'm experimenting with this, I'm going to do it with a data set that I know is clean. I'm going to create it probably, just to like try it out and figure it out. But what can people that are trying to take that next step do to try to, use real data?
Uh, if you're on the cloud, you're probably already using, and if you are not using good practices, you should. There are a lot of good practices for keeping data. You have to keep them ciphered. Any data transfer needs to happen with certificates on secure connections. So all the classical, without even considering AI, all the classical engineering practices for handling data are very, very important, and any organization needs to uh, follow suit.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when you are dealing with AI models, yes, you can apply anonymization. You have this trade-off that I just talked about. That if you just anonymize data, you can reduce the quality of the data. So, this trick of substitution, that you replace terms instead of just removing them, it doesn't doesn't have such an impact on the quality that you get on the value that you get from the data. So that's a good approach. There are other approaches like differential privacy, but you need to understand if it applies to your particular use case or not. It really depends on the technique of what you're trying to get out of the data and what model you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's relatively safe once you apply all these well-known techniques. It's relatively safe to use the data. There isn't any imminent danger. It's slightly different when you train your own models, because the key thing with LLMs is they're pre-trained, right? They
Yeah.
have been trained with public data. They don't have your private data. So you can do a lot of stuff with them. There is no risk. Once you train your own model with private data, that model needs to be separated and only provided to the user to which the data belongs. Uh,
Mm.
this again is not terrible, but uh, you may be tempted to train a single model with data from multiple customers. That's not a
Mm-hmm.
good way forward. There are well-known attacks to some ML models, especially generative models, that you can extract the data on which they were trained. So not only you need to anonymize the data that you will use to train or fine-tune these models, but you also need to separate the data from multiple customers. You don't want the data of one customer appearing in another customer. But if you apply those relatively simple separation of concerns, I don't know if that's the way to put it, uh, it's relatively safe to use these techniques. Also, in terms of data collection, you need to apply relatively standard principles like collect only the necessary data. Don't
Mm-hmm.
over collect just because you may think you may need it in the future. Also, have data retention policies. You need to delete data that's old. You probably won't use it anyway. Those things are still relevant. They were relevant before ChatGPT. We were doing that before ChatGPT. It doesn't change that, but a lot of people think that they need all the data. If you have a lot of data, you also have a big problem because you need to store that data. You need to shuffle through that data. Um, you need to, if you have the right amount of data with good quality and nothing more, that's the best scenario. It's very difficult
Mm.
to get there. It's very difficult to get there. It takes some tuning, but that's the best. Definitely the best.
Yeah, the organizations who spent millions of dollars getting their data in order over the last 10 years are like, "Oh, it's going to pay off." Hopefully they had
Hopefully.
some forethought and could think about that. There's an interesting presentation Adobe is giving at the IT Revolution event. Gosh, what is that event called? Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit. Whew. And Adobe is sharing this framework that they came up with for adopting AI technology within their organization. And they basically review the audience, who's going to be using it, the objective, what they expect to get out of it, the input data type, which is, of course, totally unique. Is it documentation? Is it run books? Is it photos? Input data classification, which gives the security sensitivity level of the input data. And then they also track technology and output, which tech they're going to be using, and then what they expect out of the generation, and what the type of output is from that generation. Kind of a fascinating. There's not that many people that have come up with a governance approach around AI, and I'm wondering what other practical applications IT people need to know about in this space. So, of course, there's the internal IT stuff that we need to focus on, but then there's also how we're guiding the business. How would you separate those two, and what advice would you give to our audience in those spaces?
Well, I'm not completely sure. In terms of governance, you need to understand where your data is, what your data is, how you're protecting your data. Then you need to understand how you train your models, if you're training models. Um, what what are the potential security flaws that those models can have, if any? Because there are some very, very simple models that have, you train them with little data and they perform maybe only a classification. It's very hard to make them fail in a
Mm,
unsafe manner. It's different with generative because you are generating tokens one after the other, and you can get some more information out of them. But it's just classification, which is the most standard thing or classical thing to do. They are much safer. So you can have different levels of scrutiny depending on the technology you are using because
mm,
they are exposed to different levels of risk. So you can try to consider that too.
that's good
But it,
stuff.
yeah, but it's still, it's going to mature more. We will see where these LLMs are going, what new technologies appear. So it's very hard to give a classification
Business
of all the
advice.
technique, yeah, business
Yeah.
advice that will apply to anyone everywhere. I think that the best thing that you can do is sit down with your use case, try to think it well, thoroughly, and do what's most reasonable for that particular use case.
That was good. That was a good consulting answer for a question that was impossible to answer.
I think I tried to dodge it, right? I don't know if I was able to.
Okay, so what about the IT space? Like you mentioned it earlier that we're making it easier for agents to respond faster and more with better responses. I think there's a lot of obvious use cases for LLMs applied to ITSM. Not we've seen it with knowledge management, generating knowledge articles. What what are the table stakes features that we that everyone should be looking at in their tools? And like, what are the edge cases? What do we see? What do you dream of in the future?
Hmm. I have
I'm
some
putting you on the
ambitious.
spot. I'm putting you on the
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, yes. I have some ambitious dreams, but let's start for the most concrete, more to the ground stuff. Yeah, I think the table stakes is improved responses. This is a feature that I was telling before. We were able to lower the response times and improve the quality. Uh, and we are not the only ones to implement this. You may have it on your
Yeah.
email even. It's everywhere. It's very useful. It's not perfect, but I mean, everybody wants to have a writing assistant, and everybody has one
Yeah.
now. So this is a very good example. It's one of the most used features of our AI hub. Even when it's not the most interesting or the one that adds the most value, but it has the most volume.
Mm.
Then we have another feature that's also very common, which is summarization. On ITSM, when you have tickets and tickets get a lot of replies and they get escalations and reassignations and things go back and forth many times, uh, you have to go into a ticket and has 200, 300 responses. There's no way that you can get up to speed quickly with that. It takes a lot of time. So clicking a button and having a good summary of what has been happening, what's expected of you, that's a lifesaver for many. But it's very interesting because it's a very important feature to have, but it gets used very little because not
Mm.
all tickets get to this huge state that requires urgently summarization. That's another very common example that's out there. Um, in many cases, you can have summaries of web pages, you can have summaries of a lot of stuff. In our case, we are using it for tickets, but LLMs in particular are very good for that, and there are other models that can do it too. We are also thinking, and we have already started working, although it's not yet in production, with some other kind of features more on the problem management space. Like, can we recommend a solution based on recent or historical solutions to similar problems? Can we automatically analyze the root cause of an issue uh, to help you prevent recurrent issues in the future, or maybe detect if there is a major incident going on and there are a lot of similar issues coming in right now? Because when you have a major incident and you get flooded with similar tickets, your agents they get very frustrated because they need to handle all these tickets, but they are all pretty much the same. If you can
Hmm.
detect the major incident early, alert the relevant person, solve it early, but also let the agents handle everything as it was a single ticket. It's amazing the level of productivity you can get out of that. So those are the kind of things that we are working right now, and in a more future looking way, more ambitious way. I I like this idea of having a copilot or a coworker. It's an AI that sits by your side on your tool and helps you do everything you are doing with the tool, or even outside the tool with other tools too. So the agent not only needs to because the work of the agent is not just responding or using the ticket tool. In order to actually solve the problems, they have to understand what is needed from them, go to other tools, do a lot of work, then come back with a good answer or a follow-up questions and whatnot. And a lot of those tasks are kind of repetitive. They can be automated, but it's just very hard to automate because you need to have like this global view of
Mm.
everything the agent is going on. And you won't be able to remove the human from the loop, but you can assist it with maybe look here, maybe look there. I can, given that you have done this, I have already an answer or a follow-up question already ready for you, waiting here on the tool, and that can speed up things dramatically. But right now, it's a little bit of science fiction. We need to
Yeah,
develop this with time.
I want it.
I want it to, definitely.
I think I saw a presentation with you earlier, and it brought up a trauma from our past, that Clippy might be coming back. I love the idea of Clippy actually being useful because that thing sucked.
The resources and the models they had back then didn't allow it to be any useful.
Yeah,
But if the idea was not bad, the execution was bad. Some people mix up this. Clippy was bad because the idea was bad. No, Clippy was a
no,
good idea, but it was a very bad execution. If you take the same idea with a great execution with technology today, you might be onto something.
exactly. Exactly. And that's why people are so excited because what was old is now new. Problems that we couldn't solve now have new solutions. I am so thankful that we have gotten to this place. We've been dreaming about this our entire careers. Multiple generations have been dreaming about this. I'm glad that we're here. What an exciting time to be alive. Danny, how can people connect with you and learn more?
They can reach me with my InvGate email. I'm always open to questions. They can also ping me in some social networks, but I am not very fan of social networks, so I'm relatively hard to find. So the easiest way is probably email.
Yeah, excellent. Or you can get in touch with me and I will direct you to Danny because he is a colleague of mine and I am proud to say that because it's been great working with you. And thank you for your time, Danny. Thanks for being on Ticket Volume.
Thank you very much, Matt, for inviting me.
My pleasure. And for our guests and our audience today, thank you for turning up the volume, the ticket volume. We've got some great episodes coming up, so please register to get alerts at ticketvolume.com. We'll also send you a free map of IT tools to enhance your IT support offering if you'd like. And thank you for listening to Ticket Volume. You can change and improve this podcast by DMing me, leaving a comment, shouting into the internet void. I'm sure I'll find it. And speaking of Ticket Volume, did you know that this podcast is brought to you by InvGate? It's a fit for purpose service desk solution with integrated asset management designed to let you focus on supporting your organization without huge implementations and 30-person service management teams. In fact, IT teams from Toyota, NASA, and McDonald's use InvGate to manage requests, automate workflows, and centralize inventory data so that they can focus on delivering better service, because good service is good business.